Smile. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's CX Quick Tips. I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have today because really it's that underlying yet fundamental components that oftentimes is so mysterious. We don't even acknowledge it or pay attention to it. And hopefully you'll get the opportunity to do that today because I have Colin Shaw with me today. Colin, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Great to be back on, Jim.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so now today we're talking about convincing customers to choose you automatically. So how can we actually train our customers to choose us automatically?
Yeah, so really good question. The key way of doing it is you've got to understand what's happening and how we do things automatically. So by definition, you've got to go and look into the science and look into sort of the whole area of behavioral science. And what you start to understand, one of the key principles in behavioral science is that when people make decisions, we use two parts of there are two ways that we make decisions. And they're in conflict with each other. Okay, so and this goes back to all the work that Professor Daniel Kahneman did, a really good book called Thinking Fast and Slow. We've called it in our book, The Intuitive Customer, rational thinking and intuitive thinking. So let me give you a brief sort of resume of that. So have you ever sort of thought to yourself, well, maybe I should have that cookie, and then you go, no, you shouldn't have that cookie because you're trying to lose weight. And so that's a sort of a classic example of that conflict that's in your brain. So intuitive thinking is basically the bit of our brain that's always on. We are always prepared to make a decision. Okay, we don't have to think about it, and you can tell when customers are thinking these things because they would say things like, oh, it's obvious, oh, it's clear, in fact, even it's a no-brainer, I don't need to think about that, so it's a decision that's made quickly and intuitively. The rational side of our brain really looks at really sort of examines things. So this is where you would turn around and say, well, I need to think about that, or I need to consider what our approach would be, or let me sleep on it. And the danger is those two parts of our brain can be in conflict with each other. What we want customers to do is we want them to make intuitive decisions. In other words, they don't think about it, they just do it, okay? And those things can be trained. So think about when you learned to drive, think about the fact that, I don't know, if you drove home last night, you suddenly thought, I don't remember driving home. You're being driven by your intuitive system, okay? You're doing things automatically, you're not having to think about them. But you had to go through a sort of a rational process to learn those things. So think about typing. When you start learning, it was really painful, but now we all type away at a great speed. So consequently, you have to get the customers to start thinking, to make them buy automatically. You have to get them to the point where it's a habit. It's where you go to. It's just what you do. I mean, I now really don't shop on any other website other than Amazon. I just go to Amazon to buy all my goods, and therefore the danger is that if you don't understand how the customer is making the choice, whether they're using that intuitive system or the rational system, the danger is that what's going to happen is that you start to get problems. So let me give you an example of this. We were doing some work with a home improvements company, okay? And what they found was that the day after the sales guy had gone to see them that evening to measure up for windows and various other things, they left the customer with a quote, and then the next day they would get a lot of returns. Why? Well, the customer, because it was a large financial outlay, was using the rational part of their brain, okay? But the rational part of our brain doesn't work well when we are tired or distracted or got a lot of noise or something like that in the background. And so consequently, what happened the next day was the customer then woke up and went, oh, I really shouldn't have made that decision last night. I'm going to phone up and cancel the order. So, these things manifest themselves all the time with customers. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does make sense. And I mean, for me, when I start thinking about certain, tactics and processes and procedures, a lot of times, like you were saying, we're undermining and defying that, whole intuitive engine
Yeah.
because of, how we're actually, for whatever reason, trying to take the step forward, but causing no step to take forward.
Yeah. I mean, let me give you another example. We were going to do a workshop in Washington, D.C. I live in Sarasota in Florida. And I went on to the airline Delta. I fly Delta all the time. Flew, ended up having to go from Tampa to Atlanta to Washington. One of my guys lives in Tampa as well. We couldn't travel together, but he said, did you fly up through Southwest? And I went, no. He said, you could have flown direct. And I went, oh, wow. I never really realized that. And it'd have been cheaper. But I have been trained. If I fly Delta, and this is the system, and this is what I do, and it's easy. And I didn't even think of, well, maybe I should do a comparison, etc. So clearly what you want that, because that that was bloody good news for Delta. But the danger is that organizations don't realize which mode the customer's using. And if they're using that rational mode all the time, then the danger is that they're going to leave you at some point because it's not an automatic choice.
Well, I mean, to me, you all start, we would talk about friction a lot of times in the customer experience. And I always would hear people talking about, negative friction and it causing a problem and decreasing the experience. But I also think there is some positive friction that we need to pay attention to. Like you talked about, intuitively, I ended up taking all these steps, and I could have eliminated some. We even find that within our own organization. Hey, we changed some things, and therefore, here's some, a positive thing, but I need to interrupt what you've been doing.
Yes.
A lot of times we'll hear it when we call into a call center and say, hey, pay attention, our menus have changed. That's causing a disruption because people normally come in and then hit a button right away. Yes. A lot of people, it's just zero. But the point being is that we need to look at that from these two different brain systems, thinking slow, thinking fast, and really use it to where ultimately and ethically, we're delivering a better customer experience.
Yes, no, absolutely, and I would absolutely agree that there is some friction that is good. As you know, we do a podcast called The Intuitive Customer, and I was kicking this around with my co-host Ryan the other day. If you think about it, when Apple launch a new product, there's suddenly a great big line out their shop. They're not making it easy for you to buy, but there is some prestige in the amount of friction that is being caused. So if and as you know, many organizations keep product back. They don't flood the market. Why? Because they're trying to build up that level of expectation and status even, that is causing friction, but there is value within that friction.
Most definitely. Okay, so but when I start thinking about this, a lot of us have to attract new customers or, rob customers, from our competitors. Does somebody already have to be, a customer for us to deliver a customer experience that is going to take advantage of these two systems?
No, because the reality is that, if I said to you, tell me what it's like dealing with an insurance company, you would be able to tell me, well, it's like this, and then you do that, and then I make a claim and that happens, and this, and it's pretty much the same across the whole of industry. So, again, we automatically think back to all the things that have happened in the past, and we can start applying these things. That's why there's such a big opportunity now with this disruption, because the disruption of the pandemic is is, that's a key time to get people to change habits. And we've all changed habits, haven't we? Working at home and various other things. This is a key time to go, well, actually, we're going to be different and we're going to do things in a different way because the customer is disrupted.
I think that's a great point. Colin Shaw, always a great opportunity to learn more, to think differently. And I think really, if we were to take anything back from all this, it's that we need to stop, pull back, think about things in a different way so that customer experience can be differentiated, unique. And then we can not just do, and you and I were talking about this earlier, the common practices that everybody was doing and assume they're best practices and create new best practices for us in order for us to have a more successful future. Colin Shaw, how do CX Quick Tip listeners get in touch with you?
Through our website, which is beyondphilosophy.com, or go and look for our podcast, the Intuitive Customer Podcast.
Colin Shaw is also a frequent contributor to CX Global Media. Colin, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Cheers.
Awesome. Always